Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we have discussed about bones of our skull, cranial skull and facial skull. We have talked about paired bones and unpaired bones and their names. Then we have talked about fossas, interior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, posterior cranial fossa, and the content passing through these foramina present in the fossas. Then we have talked about foramina present in front of the skull or interior part, and then we have talked about skull foramina present at the base of the skull. Then at the end we have talked about fractures in these cranial fossas, anterior, middle and posterior, and then we have discussed about something about mandible and temporal bone, sphenoid bone and all that. So first of all, a quick review. We'll talk about some bones of the cranial vault. The cranial vault, it is a bilaminar. Outer and inner bone is made up of compact bone, and in between the compact bone there are some vascular network or bipole. If I can show you, suppose this is the skull, and if we talk about the cranium, you can see, if you can zoom in, it is a bilaminar. Outer and inner there is a compact bone, and in between the outer and inner compact bone we have intravascular structure where it is dipole, where emissary veins and diploic veins are passing. So now, okay, if we talk about cranial vault, it is bilaminar, outer and inner compact bone. In between these compact bone we have intravascular structures or dipole structures, and the cranial vault is made up of intramembranous ossification, and the base of the skull is made up of endochondral ossification. That's a difference between the vault of the skull and between the base of the skull. Base of the skull is made up of endochondral ossification, but vault of the skull is made from intramembranous ossification. Due to this characteristic feature of intramembranous ossification of the vault of the skull, the baby which is inside the mother's uterus will exhibit a function called molding. It interdigitates parietal bones with each other, and frontal bone behind that, beneath that, and occipital bone like that. It will decrease the diameter of the head of the fetus. It will help in the delivery of the normal vaginal delivery. It will be helpful. So intramembranous ossification helps this process called molding. So that is why nature gave us an exceptional intramembranous ossification for the vault of the skull and endochondral ossification for the base of the skull. And for intramembranous ossification and endochondral ossification, we have talked in detail when we talked about general anatomy of bone and muscles. So then now we will talk about the bones of the skull. All the bones of the skull are, you can say, immobile except one bone, that is mandible. Mandible bone is mobile, and rest of all bones of the facial skull and the cranial skull are immobile. If we talk about total bones of the skull, we have total 28 bones. Okay, out of 28 bones, cranial bones are 14 and facial bones are also 14. Now we talk about cranial bones or calvaria or skull cap. There are paired bones and unpaired bones. The paired bones of cranial skull, we have parietal bone, temporal bone, then malleus, incus and stapes. You can say the bones of the ear ossicles. So there are 5 pairs, total 10 bones. And then we have unpaired bones like frontal bone, occipital bone, sphenoid and ethmoid, 4 bones. So 10 plus 4 is equal to 14. If we talk about facial skull, there are also 14 bones. Paired bones are zygomatic bone, mandibular bone, zygomatic bone, maxilla, then nasal bone, lacrimal bone, palatine and inferior nasal concha. So 6 pairs of facial skull bone are 12 bones in total. And we talk about unpaired bone, that is mandible and vomer, 2 bones. So 12 plus 2 is equal to 14. So 14 plus 14, we have 28 bones of skull. Now we will talk about, we will cut the skull into a transverse plane, and then we will say from a top view, we will see these lines. Okay, if I make the, the nasal bone over here like this, it means this one is anterior side, and that is what? Our posterior side. We are looking from the top. Okay, if I can show you, this is the normal skull. This is normal skull. Now we cut the skull in a transverse way, that it divides the plane which divides the body into upper and lower half, that is called transverse plane. So we cut the skull in a transverse plane like this, and now we are going to see like this. you can see. So for basic landmarks, you can see this is the foramen magnum and this is the foramen magnum. And rest of the thing, this is the sella turcica, this is the sella turcica, this is anterior cranial fossa, this is anterior cranial fossa, this is posterior cranial fossa, here we have posterior cranial fossa. Now we will talk about in a little detail. First of all, we will talk about anterior cranial fossa, then we will talk about middle cranial fossa, then we will talk at the end posterior cranial fossa. The interior cranial fossa, okay, as you can see, this is the transverse section of the skull. This is what cristagalli, okay, this is frontal bone actually. This is frontal bone and this is the part of ethmoid bone cristagalli, and here we have a foramen called foramen cecum. This is present in 1% of the population. This is foramen cecum, present in 1% of the population, and here there is the passage of the nasal emissary veins. And what is emissary vein? Basically, emissary veins are valveless veins which connects intracranial sinuses with extracranial veins. So they are helpful to maintain the increased intracranial pressure. You can say they are helpful in balancing the intracranial pressure. And as they are valveless, so they are very prone or vulnerable to infection. So they can spread infection very easily. So nasal emissary vein is passing through this foramen cecum, which is present in 1% of the population. Then we have another structure over here. We have a cerebriform plate over here, and we have few foramina present within the cerebriform plate. These foramina have two functions. First of all, this cerebriform plate, as it separates the frontal bone from the ethmoid bone, and these foramina gives the passage to the olfactory cells coming from the olfactory epithelium, and then they will make olfactory nerve, that is cranial number 1 cranial nerve, olfactory nerve. So the fibers of the olfactory cells are passing through these cerebriform plate foramina present in the cerebriform plate, which is the part of ethmoid bone, you can see. So that is enough for the anterior cranial fossa. Now we will talk about middle cranial fossa. If you can zoom in and you can see this dotted line, it distinguishes this one is anterior cranial fossa, and this is, we have a dotted line over here which divides. This one is posterior cranial fossa and the rest is middle cranial fossa. Now we will talk about middle cranial fossa. First of all, okay, there is a bat-like bone. This one is sphenoid bone, which is having a lesser wing and greater wing. So in between the lesser wing and greater wing, we have a fissure over here that is called superior orbital fissure. The content of the superior orbital fissures, as this superior orbital fissure present between the greater and lesser wing of sphenoid, cranial number 3, or you can say trochlear nerve, oculomotor nerve, then cranial number 4, trochlear nerve, then 5A, trigeminal nerve, first division, that is ophthalmic nerve, abducens nerve, ophthalmic vein, and sympathetic fibers of having a lacrimal nerve and frontal nerve. They use this passage superior orbital fissure. Okay, and if I can show you in the skull, if you can zoom in, you can see this one. This is an elongated fissure, that is superior orbital fissure. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
So now we will talk about another structure of the middle cranial fossa, that is optic canal. This is present over here. This is what? Optic canal. Optic canal will give passage. It is present obviously in the sphenoid bone. It will give passage to cranial number 2, that is optic nerve. It will give passage to the ophthalmic artery and gives passage to the central retinal artery. Then we will talk about 3 foramina: foramen rotundum, foramen ovale, and foramen spinosum. Foramen rotundum, which is present within the bone of the sphenoid, it gives passage to the cranial number 5B. It means 2nd division of the trigeminal nerve, that is maxillary division or maxillary nerve of trigeminal cranial nerve. Then we have another foramen over here, that is foramen ovale. The mnemonic to remember the ovale is male. Ovale, male. It means this foramen is also present in the sphenoid bone. So male. M for mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. A for accessory meningeal artery. L for lesser petrosal nerve, and E for emissary veins. And there is no fun in telling emissary veins are the valveless vein. that connects the intracranial sinuses with the extracranial veins, and they are helpful in maintenance the intracranial pressure, and they are vulnerable to infection. Then we have another foramen over here that is called foramen spinosum, and this is also present in the sphenoid bone. It gives passage to the middle meningeal artery, middle meningeal vein, and meningeal branch of mandibular division of trigeminal nerve. Then we have another lacerated foramen over here. Name is same like lacerated foramen, and mnemonic for the lacerated foramen is DEMI. This foramen is also present. Some books written is present between the sphenoid and temporal bone. So the DEMI means D for deeper or great petrosal nerve, then E for emissary veins, M for meningeal branch of ascending pharyngeal artery, and I for internal carotid artery. So this is the content which passes through the lacerated foramen. Last but not the least, we have groove for greater petrosal nerve or hiatus of greater petrosal nerve, which give passage to the greater petrosal nerve plus petrosal branch of meningeal artery. Then we have an impression over here. That is impression is called trigeminal ganglion impression, present in the temporal bone. Temporal bone is divided into, here we can see there is a squamous part of temporal bone, and this is petrous part of temporal bone. Otherwise temporal bone has 5 parts: squamous part, petrous part, mastoid part, tympanic part, and styloid part. We will discuss this thing in detail just 2 to 3 minutes after. So these content we have talked about, that anterior cranial fossa. This content is present in the middle cranial fossa. Now we will talk about posterior cranial fossa. If you can see like this, I am making this dotted line into a complete line. So we have talked about anterior cranial fossa, we have talked about middle cranial fossa. Now we will talk about posterior cranial fossa, and we make, this is sella turcica. This is sella turcica. You can say, if we see in detail, this is anterior clinoid process. Anterior clinoid process. This one and this one. This is posterior clinoid process. This is tuberculum sella. This is tuberculum sella. This is dorsum sella, and this is called sella turcica, where pituitary gland, master gland, is resides. Now we will talk about posterior cranial fossa. First of all, we will talk about this one, internal acoustic meatus, present over here. This is also present in the petrous part of the temporal bone, lower part, we can see our posterior part. It gives passage to the cranial nerve, seminifacial nerve, and vestibulocochlear nerve, plus it gives passage to the labyrinthine artery, the artery which gives blood supply to our vestibule and cochlea. Then another structure present over here, that is called jugular foramen, cranial nerve 9, 10, and 11 passing through this structure. Okay, jugular foramen, cranial nerve 9, 10, and 11, like glossopharyngeal vagus and accessory nerve. Then it gives passage to the superior bulb of internal jugular vein, inferior petrosal nerve, and sigmoidal sinus, and it gives passage to the meningeal branch of ascending pharyngeal artery and occipital artery. Then we have a canal over here, hypoglossal canal, which gives protection to the hypoglossal nerve, cranial nerve number 12. Then we have a condyle over here called occipital condyle or condyle canal. It gives passage to the missionary vein, which passes from the sigmoid sinus to the vertebral vein in the neck region. And last but not the least, we have mastoid foramen over here. Mastoid foramen gives passage to the mastoid missionary vein from the sigmoid sinus and meningeal branch of the occipital artery. So that was about posterior cranial fossa. The only thing left is foramen magnum. Okay, if I can show you over here, the content passing through the foramen magnum are, first of all, is medulla or medulla oblongata, meninges, plus it gives passage to the anterior spinal artery, posterior spinal artery, vertebral artery, and it gives passage to the dural vein, plus it gives passage to the cranial number 11, accessory nerve, spinal part of accessory nerve also pass through the foramen magnum. Now these are the contents, posterior, middle, and inferior concha. Now we will talk about some foramina present at the base of the skull. Okay, these foramina present like this. We have talked about this in detail. Now we will talk about foraminas present at the base of the skull over here. We will talk about stylomastoid foramen. We will talk about pterygopalatine fissure. We will talk about palatovaginal canal, anal canal, incisive foramina, greater and lesser palatine fissures, and pterygoid canal. Now come over here. First of all, there is a pterygopalatine fissure that will give passage to the lesser petrosal nerve and give passage to the chorda tympani nerve. Then there is another foramen called stylomastoid foramen, give passage to the cranial number 7, that is facial nerve. Then there is another canal called palatovaginal canal, gives passage to the pharyngeal nerve and artery. Then there is another canal called arnold canal, it gives passage to the branch of the vagus nerve, that is also called Arnold's nerve. Then incisive foraminas, anterior and posterior. Anterior will give passage to the left nasopalatine nerve, and posterior will give incisive foramina will give passage to the right nasopalatine nerve. Then we have greater palatine foraminas or fissure. It gives passage to the greater palatine nerve, and lesser palatine foramen which gives passage to the lesser palatine nerve. And last but not the least, we have pterygoid canal. It gives passage to the nerve to the pterygoid canal or viridian nerve. Then we will talk about foramina present in the face of the skull or frontal skull. We will talk about zygomaticofacial foramina. We will talk about superior orbital foramina. We will talk about inferior orbital foramina, and then we will talk about mental foramen. So if we talk about zygomaticofacial foramen, it gives passage to the zygomaticofacial nerve. Then if we talk about mental foramina, it gives passage to the inferior alveolar nerve. And if we talk about supraorbital foramina, it will give passage to supraorbital nerve and vessel, and infraorbital foramina will give passage to the infraorbital nerve and vessel. Then now we will talk about suture of this skull. I can show you this one. First of all, sutures of the skull is coronal suture. A suture or intersection of, you can say this suture is present between the frontal and parietal bones, or you can say the intersection of coronal suture, intersection of frontal bone and two parietal bone. Okay, I will show you like this. Coronal suture is present between the frontal bone and one frontal bone and two parietal bones. Okay, I can show you like this. This is coronal suture. The suture present between one frontal bone and two parietal bones. This is coronal suture. Now we have sagittal suture. This is the sagittal suture. The suture present between two parietal bones. Then we have frontal or metopic suture. This suture is present between the two frontal bones. And this metopic is a Greek word, means our forehead. And this, okay, you can show that a little bit. Metopic suture is present between the two frontal bones, and normally it fuses at the 8 years of age, and it happens in ethnic origin population, and 8% of the people are involved. It starts from the nasion to the glabella. And what is nasion, we will talk about in detail. Nasion is just intersection, or you can say the junction of frontonasal suture and internasal suture. Okay, I can show you like this. Frontonasal suture and internasal suture, they are joined together. This point is called nasion. And what is glabella? This superciliary arches, they join together, and most anterior-most part of the frontal bone, that is called glabella. So from here to here we have metopic suture. Normally it don't appear in the normal human beings, but it happens in the 8% of the population, and it fuses with each other at 8 years of age. And okay, if we talk about sagittal suture, this suture present between the two parietal bones, if it fuses before time, then there is a pathology called scaphocephaly, in which there is a more diameter from anterior to posterior aspect, as sagittal suture is closes earlier. Fusion of sutures are earlier, synostosis. Then we have talked about squamous suture. This suture present between the parietal bone and parietal bone. I can show you like this. Squamous suture. This is the squamous suture. Suture present between the parietal bone and temporal bone. This is squamous suture. Then we have lamodoid suture present between the parietal bones and occipital bone. This is lamodoid suture. This is lamodoid. This is squamous. This is coronal, and this one is sagittal suture. Then after these sutures, we will talk about, okay, there is a clinical thing is caput succedaneum. What happens in this caput succedaneum during the delivery? The baby fetal capillaries, head of the fetal head capillaries are injured. Due to the injury to the capillaries, there will be a little part of the skull becomes dilated, but it will be recure on its own. Then we will talk about some junction present between these sutures. First of all, we will talk about lambda. Again, the lambda is present between the, or you can say the intersection of or junction of coronal suture and sagittal suture. So this point is called lambda, and this is the point where the little fetus or kids having a fontanelle called anterior fontanelle, and it closes at 12 to 18 months of age, and this anterior fontanelle in the kids will help us to check the blood pressure, to check the hydration, it will give us an idea about intracranial pressure, it is decreased or increased, and it also gives us opportunity to take a cerebrospinal fluid sample. Then we will talk about it is called bregma. This is also called posterior fontanelle. Bregma is present between the two parietal bones and frontal bones, or you can say the junction of lambdoid suture and sagittal suture. This is the bregma, and here the point where we have obviously the 6-month-old baby having a posterior fontanelle, or you can say this is a triangular shaped fontanelle, a posterior fontanelle at bregma, and we have a diamond shaped fontanelle, it is called anterior fontanelle. Then we will talk about pterion. This is the most weakest part of the skull. Pterion, it is the junction of parietal bone, frontal bone, temporal bone, and greater wing of sphenoid bone. This is the point, this is called pterion. And in kids, there also have a fontanelle called sphenoidal fontanelle. And there is another point we have, that is asterion. Look at here, a junction between the parietal bone, occipital bone, or temporal bone, or you can say an intersection or junction of temporomastoid suture, lambdomastoid suture, and occipitomastoid suture. This is the point is called asterion, and this is the same point here the babies have a fontanelle called mastoid fontanelle. But these fontanelles will be closed in their mostly the anterior fontanelle will close at 12 to 18 months of age, and posterior fontanelle will close at 1 year of age. Now we will talk about some other structure called glabella. We have talked about the superciliary arches. They will join together and they will make a interior most part of the forehead is called glabella. Then inion, the posterior most protuberance of the occipital bone, that is called inion. Then we have nasion, junction of frontal bone and nasal bone, are the junction of frontonasal suture and internasal suture, that is called nasion. And nasion to glabella we have a metopic suture, we have talked about that. Then there is a gnathion. This is the central part of the chin at the lower border of mandible, lower mandible and center of the chin. This is gnathion. And another is factor or thing is vertex, the topmost part of the skull or vault or skull cap, that is vault. It is present posterior to the lambda. Now we will talk about some bones. If we talk about, first of all, we talk about, before that we'll talk about some fractures. The most common facial, if we talk about fracture of the facial skull, the most common fractured facial bone is nasal bone. The second most common fractured nasal bone, that is zygomatic bone. And there is a third most common facial bone fracture is mandible bone. So number one, nasal, zygomatic, and mandible. Now if there is a fracture of the anterior cranial fossa over here, then there will be damage to the cerebriform plate foraminals, cerebriform plate, and in the consequence of this, there will be bleeding from the nose, that is called epistaxis, plus bleeding, not only bleeding from the nose, but CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, will also leak from the nose, that is called CSF rhinorrhea. And if the orbital part, so this is the orbital part of the frontal bone, if these orbital parts are damaged, then it will lead to the exophthalmos, and this is also called black eye in anterior cranial fossa. If we talk about middle cranial fossa, Damage to the middle cranial fossa over here, there will lead to the bleeding from the ear, okay, and CSF from the ear. Plus, if the the petrous part of temporal bone is injured, internal acoustic meatus will be injured, then cranial nerve 7th and 8th will be damaged. And if here in this is the sella turcica, right, and from both sides of the sella turcica, here and here we have cavernous sinus, and if the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus damaged or fractured, then cranial number 3, 4 and 6 will be damaged. Then and we know if this part is damaged, 7th, 8th nerve is also damaged, then person will having a vertigo, blackening. Then we will talk about posterior cranial fossa. If the posterior cranial fossa is damaged, then bleeding from the nasopharynx and easy bruising on the mastoid and sternocleidomastoid muscle. And there is no fun in telling that if jugular foramen is damaged, then 9th, 10th and 11th cranial nerve will also damage. As we have discussed, that jugular foramen give passage to the 9th, 10th and 11th cranial nerve. So, but hypoglossal nerve don't get damaged because it is highly protected by the hypoglossal canal. So then now we will talk about some bones. First of all, we will talk about mandible. This is the strongest, lowest and largest bone of the face. And if we talk about its body parts, it having body, then it has angle, then it also have ramus. There are 5 body parts, and this is upper part and lower part. Upper part is alveolar part, here we having teeth, and lower part is called basal part or base. Then there is a symphysis mentis. The two halves of the mandible, they join together and they fuse together at the age of 2 years of age. And what is symphysis, by the way? This is just the two bones when joined together and make an immobile joint. When two bones join together and make immobile joint, that is called symphysis. It may be symphysis mentis or maybe it is symphysis pubis, where two pubic bones join together. Then now we will talk about mandibular just. There is a mandibular foramen over here. If you can see mandibular foramen at the top middle part of the ramus. Here the passage of inferior alveolar nerve, and it will goes inside and will come outside through a foramen called mental foramen, present over here just below the second premolar teeth here. Then okay, we'll talk about angle. In by birth this is very obtuse, insensitive angle, but after birth in children this angle is 140 degree, but in adults it is 110 degree. And then there are some weakest points in the mandible. The most weakest point is this one, canine socket. This one, like you can say, we have incisors in the front, then we have canines, then we have premolars, then we have molars. So this canine socket over here, this is the canine. This is very number one weaker or weakest part of the mandible. This is, if there is any blow to this part, it will be fractured very easily. And second most part that can be injured, that is angle of the mandible. Then third most part is neck of the mandible. There is no fun in telling. This is choroid process, the condylite process. It makes the temporomandibular joint, and through this temporomandibular joint, mandible have a connection with the skull. So that was about mandible bone. If we talk about hyoid bone, present in front of the neck, that is U-shaped bone, there is no articulation of this bone, and this bone is suspended with the help of muscles. So there are 5 parts of the hyoid bone: body, 2 lesser horn or cornu, and 2 greater horn or cornu. With the 2 lesser horn of cornu, there is attachment of a ligament called stylohyoid ligament, and this stylohyoid ligament may be ossified in someone. So that was about hyoid bone, U-shaped. It is present at the level of cervical vertebra number 3, and is suspended within the muscles. No articulation with any other bone. So there is no joint formation. 5 parts, as we told you: body and 2 horns, greater and lesser horns. Then the hyoid ligament may be ossified in life. And medical legal, it is very important that hyoid bone will tell us that either the death is due to throttling, that is called manual strangulation, or is death due to simple strangulation. And what is strangulation? Just an asphyxia, or you can say blockage or occlusion of the blood vessel and airway to the human being. Then we will talk about maxilla. Okay, you can look at here. This is the maxilla bone, and it is having articulation with 9 bones, 2 bones of cranial skull and 7 bones of facial skull. Okay, two bones of fish skulls are number one, there's no fun in telling, frontal bone and ethmoid bone. And 7 bones of face which having articulation with maxilla are nasal bone, superior nasal concha, middle nasal concha, inferior nasal concha, vomer, zygomatic. And there is a clinical feature called fibrous dysplasia, in which there is scar tissue grows in place of a normal tissue. Due to that, there is a absence of permanent teeth in the maxilla. So this is called fibrous dysplasia. Then we have occipital bone. Occipital bone have present over here, having 2 knuckle lines, superior knuckle line and highest knuckle line and superior knuckle line. With the highest knuckle line, it gives an origin to the occipital valley of occipitofrontalis muscle, and superior knuckle line will give origin to the trapezius muscle and insertion to the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Then we will talk about sphenoid bone. This is a bat-shaped bone. As we know, mandible, it is a horseshoe-shaped bone, but sphenoid, this is a bat-shaped bone having one body, having 2 lesser wings, 2 greater wings, and 2 pterygoid processes. And yes, sphenoid bone, we know there is a body that is called sella turcica, where pituitary gland resides, and in lateral to the sella turcica we have cavernous sinus, very important clinically. And now next we will talk about temporal bone. It is having 5 parts: squamous part, temporal part, mastoid part, tympanic part, and styloid part. There are 5 parts. If we talk about squamous part, this is just a smooth part. Temporal part is very hard part. It makes the base of the skull. It is having attachment with the sphenoid bone. Then we will talk about mastoid part, mastoid air cells and mastoid process. It is absent in by birth, but there is a formation of mastoid tip at 2 years of age. And mastoid is a Greek word, meanings are breast. And there is a styloid process over here. Styloid process, it is connected with 2 ligaments. Attachments are there are 2 attachments: stylomandibular ligament, stylohyoid ligament. And if we talk about there is a syndrome called styloid syndrome or eagle syndrome. What happens if there is a enlargement or elongated styloid process or the calcification of stylomandibular or stylohyoid ligament, stylomandibular ligament or stylohyoid ligament, then it is called eagle syndrome or styloid syndrome. Where there is a nerve-like pain in the neck, the side of the neck, and base of the tongue, and exaggerated or aggravated on swallowing. That is called eagle syndrome or styloid syndrome. At the end, there are 3 muscular attachment with the styloid process, that are stylohyoid, stylopharyngeus, styloglossous. So stylohyoid gets innervation by facial nerve, stylopharyngeus gets innervation by the glossopharyngeal nerve, and styloglossous muscle will get innervation by the vagus nerve. So that was about something regarding the bones of the skull and cranial fossas and foraminas and fissures and the content passing through these foraminas and fissures. Is there anything I left? Do you have any question?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.